So sometimes parentheses are going to be present, and distributive property is what we're going to use to remove parentheses. So remember, distributive property is when you multiply through addition. So notice how the 2 is connected to the parentheses with respect to multiplication. So to remove the parentheses, I'm allowed to distribute the 2 through the addition. So 2 times x is going to be 2x, plus then 2 times 3 would be 6. That's going to equal then the 20. So by using the distributive property, that allows me to remove the parentheses out of the problem. Now I'm down to a 2-step equation. So I use my 0 pair first. So to make a positive 6 go away, I have to add a negative 6. But to keep the equation balanced, you have to add a negative 6 to the other side as well. So 6 to the negative 6 is going to 0 out. That leaves you the 2x. And then 20 plus negative 6. Money that you have, money that you owe. So you're going to lose $6 of income. 20 minus 6 is going to be 14. And since you have more money than you owe, it's going to stay as a positive 14. And then to make the coefficient of 1, you have to divide by 2. Because anything divided by itself turns into a 1. 14 divided by 2 would be the other side. So the 2's will divide out, and x equals then 2 goes into 14 7 times. So x would be 7. That would be the solution. So if I look at this next one, remember this is really a plus negative 4, because we really see that as 2 terms. We want to see that as addition. So I'm allowed to distribute through the parentheses. Negative 3 times x is going to be negative 3x, plus then negative 3 times negative 4. Well, negative times negative is going to be a positive 12. Then that's going to equal then 15. So by multiplying the negative 3 through the parentheses to both the x and the negative 4, you get negative 3x plus 12 equals 15. So notice how, again, I addressed the subtraction before I use the distributive property. I need to see the subtraction as an addition statement. So now I'm ready to do my 2 steps. So to make the 12 go away, I use its opposite. So I add a negative 12 here, as long as I add a negative 12 to the other side of the equation. So that 0 pair turns to 0. You add negative 3x. And then 15 plus negative 12, they're going to work against each other. Different signs means you're going to subtract. And the label you're going to keep would be a positive 3. Then to make the negative 3 go away, because remember I need to make the coefficient of x a 1, so I need to divide by negative 3, as long as I divide this by negative 3. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 is, again, that's just going to be our 1, or just write down x. And then 3 divided by 3 is going to be 1 again, but since there's only one negative, it's going to turn into a negative. So x is going to equal negative 1 would be the solution to that equation. So as we move further into equations, the equations get a little more complicated. Some of them will even have a variable on both sides of the equation. So basically what this is just kind of a checklist to solve about any kind of equation that's out there. So when you're solving equations, if you see parentheses present, you want to use the distributive property to remove parentheses to start with. Once you remove parentheses, then you can combine any like terms. So you're basically going to simplify each side of the equation first. So the next thing is, if the variable is on both sides, what you want to do is pick on the little guy, and we want to use its 0 pair, and we want to perform the property equality on both sides to make that variable disappear off one side and just show up on just one side of the equation. So you're basically trying to get the variable on one side of the equation to start with. Then we can start doing the 2-step process. We get x by itself by going after the addition with the 0 pair, and then you can finish with multiplication or division, making the coefficient of the variable 1. So if I look at the equation, 9x plus 2 equals 6x minus 10. Notice how the variable is not on the same side of the equation. So between a 9x and a 6x, I want to pick on what's called the little guy. Well, a 6, if I'm looking at the coefficients, the 6 is a smaller number than the 9. So 6x is considered the smaller guy. So I want to zero him out, so I add a negative 6x here, as long as I add a negative 6x on their side. And since its like term is the 9x, I'm going to put it underneath its like term and put the negative 6x underneath the 9x. So then I draw my little line and bring down my new equation. So remember, when you have like terms, you just focus on the coefficients. So a 9 and a negative 6 would be a 3, so it's going to be 3x. And then the plus 2 comes down. On the other side of the equation, the 6x and negative 6x divided or zeroed out. They're a zero pair. That left me with the negative 10. So from here, we got x on one side. Now I have to just get x by itself. So we go after the zero pair first, which is the 2. And then we go after the coefficient second. So add a negative 2 to this side of the equation, because that's the opposite of a positive, as long as I add a negative 2 on their side of the equation. So the 2 and negative 2 will zero out, and that gives you this 3x. And that's going to equal then this negative 12. And then to make the coefficient of 1, we have to divide by 3, as long as I divide their side by 3. So the 3's will divide out, and therefore x is going to equal then a negative 4. So negative 4 would be the solution to that equation. On the next example, we have 2x minus 3 plus 5x equals 8 minus 6x. On this one, I don't see any parentheses, but there are some like terms to contend with. So see how we have a 2x and a negative 3 and a 5x. The 2x, you have the negative 3 and this 5x over here. The 2x and the 5x are like terms, so that's going to end up being 7x and a negative 3. So I combine my like terms. That's going to equal then this 8 and this negative 6x. So I'm going to go ahead and just rewrite that as an addition problem. So now each side is simplified. 7x plus negative 3 are not like terms. 8 plus negative 6x are not like terms. So I'm going on down to the next step, which is if the variable is on both sides, we want to pick on the little guy. Well, the variable is on the left side and the variable is on the right side, so it's on both sides of the equation. So between a 7 and a negative 6, the negative 6 is considered the smaller guy. So I want to zero out the negative 6x. And to zero out a negative 6x, what we want to do is add a 6x. But if I add a 6x over here, I have to balance the equation by adding a 6x to their side of the equation. And it's like terms with the 7x, so I'll put it underneath that. So it's going to give me this 13x. And that's going to be a plus a negative 3. And that's going to equal then this 8. And then to get rid of the negative 3, I want to add a positive 3. And I want to add a positive 3 over there. And since the negative 3 and the 3 will zero out, that leaves me then this 13x. And that's going to equal then an 11. Looks like I'm running out of room there, so I'm going to rewrite that. So 13x is going to equal 11. And so to get rid of the coefficient, I have to divide by 13 as long as I divide their side by 13. And so 13 divided by 13 is going to turn into a 1. So there's my x. And 11 can't really be divided by 13, so we just leave it as a fraction, 11 over 13. So that solution would be actually a fraction. We haven't talked much about fractions, so we'll get into more of that later. So if I have like 28 equals the 7x minus 3 times the quantity x minus 4. Again, we don't like subtraction, so I'm going to go ahead and change that to a plus, make that a negative, plus, make that a negative. That's that KCC method. So I'm going to bring down the 28. There's nothing to do on the left side. On the right side, I have that 7x. But to remove parentheses, I got to multiply the -3 through the parentheses. So -3 times x is just going to be -3 times x. So that's going to be plus a -3x. And then -3 times -4 is going to be a positive 12. So if I look at my like terms, I have a 7x and a -3x. That's going to be then a 4x. So I'm going to bring everything else down, write a whole new equation. Now this one, the x is on the right-hand side of the equation, but that's okay. I'm still trying to get it by itself. So I'm going to just try to get it by itself on the right side of the equation. So again, I go after the addition part, which is the 12. I need to add a -12 there as long as I add a -12 to the other side of the equation. So it's going to be 16 and a 4x. So to get the coefficient of 1, I have to divide by 4 as long as I divide the other side by 4. So 4 goes to 16 4 times, and the 4's turn into a 1, so that's 1x or just simply x. So the solution would be then x equals 4. So that's kind of how we solve equations involving parentheses and variables on both sides. That's about as hard as they get.